because obviously we're not with them, right? We don't have their feedback. This is all us in a black room, or that room. But for that matter, we just want to understand where they at with those parts and pieces. So now that we looked at the program, we kind of visioned a little bit and looked about aesthetically and what are the things that are important for them. We start working with just basic concept. Talk about the relationship. So we know that we need a kitchen. Where does it make sense for the kitchen to be at? Services, the classroom, what is the importance of the community center? How close should it be to the building? Understanding that there is one building out of the entire campus, because this is an existing school, there's one building that was not allowed to be turned out. So what is the best use for that one building? You know, how do we go through the process? We use blocks, we use images, we use colors, we use scribbles that half of the time we don't know what they mean. I'm kidding, I know exactly what they mean, but it's just kind of getting those ideas into paper so that we can translate them later and come up with a resolution. This is not a design solution, but this is an understanding of how each part and piece of the element that composes this school relates. So for example, it was very strongly understood that the Henderson Avenue is kind of your bus loop and services and public area. So you can see that this is the existing building. So we say, well, the United Way makes sense to be here because the bus loop wants to be there. The kitchen and services makes sense to be there. And so the other half of the existing building, what makes sense? Well, maybe the media is a nice connection to the rest of it. So this is what that process starts doing, administration, when it makes sense for administration to be close to this corner because this is your, what we call it, Pedestrian Plaza. This is your main point of pedestrian traffic. And it's actually a little bit of a safety concern because all you have right here, where most of the students coming through, is a 5-foot sidewalk. No buffer, no nothing. So we try to enhance all these elements. So this is kind of a roadmap of relationship. It doesn't mean that the building is going to look anything like this. It's just a roadmap of how we move forward. So then we have another meeting, right? We consolidated in the first meeting all this information. So we're going to do another meeting where we call design approach. So let's talk about how we start refining what we discussed. So what we like to do for this is present multiple options, right? Multiple options that tackle these different aspects, but that can also be used in the selection process to say, well, I really like option 1, but can we mix it with option 3, just to understand all the parts and pieces. And this is a very simple key diagram that we did, and with the understanding of the following, that these rectangles represent classroom space, and the circle is administration. Very simple. Everything else, when it comes to dining, media, community center, was already set because of the context, and that was agreed upon. And this is the portion that wasn't quite figured out. So we try to experiment with that and presented that to the team. So we go and say, as I said earlier, this is the part that is kind of fixed, and then this is the area that we're messing with. Well, where does it make sense for administration to be, and what should be the layout of those classroom wings? And we have a 3D diagram that goes with it so that we can see what is that doing from a spatial perspective. So you can see how this option creates these kind of intimate spaces or intimate courtyards that are very reminiscent of what they currently have. And it has all the different aspects that go with that. We have art, we show a little bit of a mural where those could be potentially, we show some of the brick. Brick is something that was very important for the community. So we go through this exercise and we do the same for all the other options, right? So this is more of an open courtyard with administration in the middle, closer to the pedestrian side. And then the 3D view of what is that and how is it connecting to the reserve area and the green spaces and the pedestrians. Same thing, this is another kind of exploration. What if we broke it into pieces and created one large space enclosed by the building? And again, we explored it again. Option number 4, very similar to number 2, but with administration instead of here being there. And then option number 5, which has a little bit of kind of relocating the art pieces and putting administration back. So you can see how this is what it starts moving and keeping everything fairly in the same location. So we go through this exercise, right? And we present this to the group, and we go back and say, well, what is the option that you like best? So we do a little survey with everybody. They say, well, we like this, we like that. and try to narrow it down, right? So we go from 5, there was 1 that was received very well. No, actually, we had a tie. We had two options that were equally balanced. So we proposed to further refine those two, and these were the ones. Option 1, the thing that was most important on option 1 for the committee was the intimate spaces that are continue to be reminiscent of what is there right now. So this school is very important for the community, so we want to make sure we give them something that connects them back to it, right? And then option 5, what they like about option 5 is the administration kind of being a little more halfway centrally located. But again, this is not exclusive. This dot could be here, right? And it's still create the same. So they're not mutually exclusive. We can work to do what the group thinks is best. So we went through that exercise, and here's where we start refining. Now we're not just talking about massing, we're talking about actual classroom layout, administration, kitchen, and starting to understand how those parts and pieces go. This is a large floor plan of the ground floor showing, the parts and pieces that make the program. And then this is the second floor. Then again, we go to that 3D view so that we can see this is 1 story, this is 2 story, this is half story, this is your 1 story existing building, central energy plan, and what we call not a gym, which is not a gym.
Enclosed play pavilion with air
It's
conditioning.
not a gym.
Play pavilion for fish.
Well, when you did the program, did you design it for today or for future?
So, 2 things, so by state statute, any school is required to anticipate future growth. This is an area that is, that has a lot of potential for growth. That's what you can see with some of the pre-development. Yes, sir.
Well, let's jump in. This particular school was a Castaldi approved. Castaldi only allows you to replace in kind student seat capacity. That's part of the Castaldi process. So the roof design has to meet that student population. But he'll show you what options we put in for the potential future growth to be added relatively easily without a whole lot of hard work. Castaldi lots of
Introduction of the program.
I would like to point out that we met with the city and they were adamant that no growth is ever gonna happen. They don't even imagine anything going on, and so we don't believe them, so.
One more question, what is the existing square footage of the existing school right now and what's your proposal?
The existing school, what is the existing square footage? It's a little, I don't know off the top of my head, but the student capacity was left the same. So obviously, a lot of the areas that you currently have on a new prototype would not be accounted for. So obviously, the existing square footage is less than what you currently have now because there are additional requirements. So for example, the cafeteria that they have started when the school was first built and it's been added on, but they got to a point where they can't add any more. But they do have additional classroom spaces like building 16. This was added in 98, I'm sorry. So they do have a lot less square footage than it would be otherwise.
Our prototype right now is about 123,000 square feet, 1,000 student stations. This is, I think they're just about 600, 560, 600, I think was the number.
For the square footage, we are a little bit
This
under
is-
90,000.
If you include everything here, it's about 100.
Yeah, which is commensurate with that reduced population per the Castaldi.
What about, when we started developing those programs, did we have like a community meeting, public meeting?
We're going to.
Oh, okay, that's couple.
Your first blush, you guys are special.
Okay, all right.
It's already.
So we did, so what that process, the way that starts, and just so for everybody's knowledge is, you start with the requirement from the state, right? SREF, so you go in there, so you have X amount of kids, a classroom should be this size, you have X amount of classroom with students, you should have a dining that is this big, or ESC and so on. So we created that, and then we sit down with the principal and the academic side of the district and talk about, well, this is your baseline, this is what you have at your school right now, how do we marry the two together? So it's a lot of back and forward, let's put this one together. But then we would use that information to develop what you're seeing, because when we go to the public and we show them, we wanna make sure that we have answers, because sometimes it's very tough to just show ideas that are not somewhat understood. So we wanna make sure that there's a good graph from the design team, from the end user, from the district, so that we can, address questions as they come up. And when we don't know the answer, we just run.
What we're anticipating doing is, we asked to come to this meeting to get your guys' thoughts on, we narrowed it down to 2 designs with a preferable final design that he'll show you eventually. The intent was to get your feedback, see what you think, ask questions, have us answer those questions, then bring it to the superintendent, get the superintendent and his executive staff to kind of take a look at where we're going. Then if they're okay with that, and we're meeting within the next few days, then we would get some local community members. One person who's very intimately involved in the community is Jerry Weir. And we'd have a small, intimate with the principal discussion of what we're doing, what we're presenting to you. And then if it's well received, then we would kick and go to that big community meeting as we start developing it. So it's little baby steps to make sure we're not spinning our wheels, to basically then go to the community and unfold the whole package.
So the great thing that the district did, and I think that this should be something that you do regularly as you move forward, is before this project went out, there was a public, open meeting where, they did it in 2 formats. One, where they had the kids provide feedback on, they asked them, what would your new school look like? And it was super cool how they came up with all these little sketches. But then they also had an open meeting for adults, and people went out and talked about, hey, this is meaningful to me because the city here has a history, because the great, mission that it has, because, all the different reasons. And all of that feedback is in here. So that's when you have commitment from the community, just to listen to them from the very beginning is the best thing you can possibly do. So I think that was very, very good on the part of the district to make sure that they had buy-in even before it became a project. So this is, again, ground floor, second floor. And then this is the 3D view of the second refinement of the option. You can kind of see where the massing is, what kind of 1 story or half story here. And this is 2-story, 1 story and a half, and then CEP and media and United Way.
Javier,
Yes, ma'am.
are you going with 50% shelter or just the gym, the cafeteria area?
So we had a meeting with, we've been participating in meetings with the school district for this particular project and the county. And essentially, our understanding is that the county is unwilling to sign off on anything less than code prescribed. Which is super tricky, because code is very clear. This is not a gray thing or this is black and white. It says you either need to meet all these criteria or have a concurrence letter saying that you're not meeting it because of this reason and that the county or emergency management is okay with that. So you can have a letter that says, hey, we the county understand that you're doing something else, but we're not in concurrence. That means that essentially it's not code compliant. So it's super tricky and it has some serious explanations. So for example, 50% of this whole thing, you gotta do 50% of the full area, right? But you are allowed to deduct corridors, labs, kitchens, and so on, right? So once you take that out, you end up with a number, and then you cut that in half, and that is a shelter area. In our case, we took everything out and we were roughly 48-ish. 46, right? So that means that half of that, 23,000 square feet, has to be sheltered. Well, we all know that your dining room, which is the one, the multipurpose room, which is the one most conducive to be in a shelter area, is not sufficient because that's probably gonna range around 7,000 square feet. So that implies that you're gonna have to spill over classrooms. Now, classroom has a whole set of questions right now. How you supervise people inside classroom, how you supervise people in the corridor. So this is where we think the county and the district should be able to come together and say, look, it's just not conducive. We understand the need, but you can't take the need on the hands of having an area that is not safe, not secure. I mean, these are legitimate concerns. And then obviously there's a cost associated with it, right? So we know that if, say that 23,000 square feet is roughly about here, let's say. I think, includes pretty much the whole thing. That means that every aspect of this building has to meet that. So for the roof, I have to have double the weight of steel, right? Because that is the requirement. The walls are easy because it's steel top, that is not big, but the openings within that wall, there are no window system that would be rated for those wind speeds. So now you have to have shutters. So you're talking about having shutters on classrooms. They're not gonna be manual, most likely they're gonna be automatic. That is a maintenance issue. So there's a lot of complications that go beyond what is reasonable. So, and that's exactly the intent of the code, is to have that process of you talking to emergency management, coming up with, what is reasonable and attainable, and that's why they have that language in there, because otherwise, all they would say, mid-code, be done. They have that leeway in there specifically for that reason. But yeah, that is tricky. So we had those two options, met with the team, we say, what are we gonna do? And this was the solution. So they still like this option, but the leg got tired and went back a little bit, still for multiple reasons. One, to provide expansion, ease of expansion, provide security from 4th Street, which is, it's a little bit of an issue area, but we know that this is a way of addressing the issue, we firmly believe that. But here's where we are right now. So administration can handle your services, dining, kitchen, arts, building at 16, which is the United Way Community Center, and the media, CEP on this side. 2-story classroom area, mostly of your pre-K, K panel contained close to administration. And then primary and intermediate, primary and intermediate above, and then play areas. Not a gym, is close to the community center, so the community can benefit of having access to this area for weekend games or afternoon,
Sure, let me just move the microphone.
With the school. And then we provide a little bit of entertainment from this area out in this space.
And up in the upper area, the central portion, if you could point to that, that's where the playgrounds are a little bit. This is the area that you spoke to, the intimate areas, those are where the playgrounds, the various age group playgrounds are gonna be. And the concerns was, there's a lot of gun potential on that 4th Street. We wanted to create something that provides a barrier. Okay, so while we went from the W, we stretched that out because that's more hard building fits. Now, we can have cluster windows in those classrooms so they get daylight, but it's high enough that if an incident were to occur. So you've created a safe zone, for lack of a better term, with all the little kids that are there.
Yeah, and my kid went to Allen Park, and one of the benefits of Allen Park is that big open field. And how you introduce outdoor activities into the program?
So other
It's all,
activity, specifically,
like a big grass area for the kids to just run,
so this is your play areas down here.
but that's paved, that's like a paved basketball court.
This is all grass around it, and then the basketballs could be, maybe just one, and then you have that area. So we haven't gotten to that part of the refinement, but that is the area here. And we did have other options that chose that, but the intimate space seemed to be the thing that everybody was gravitating towards.
What about that non-gym area, what is it gonna be used for?
It's a gym with a different name.
It's PE, but they also use that after school. There's a sister building up the road, the Stars Complex, that participates in a lot of events for kids after hours and provides, but they also do that here at this campus with their existing building. Their existing building is, old, dilapidated, rotted out, but they have air, they have some bathrooms, nothing fancy, it's just a concrete deck with basketball, stripes on it, and some hoops.
So it's an open court or?
No, it's enclosed, so that's why we use the term NAG, not a gym, because SRF allows us to build a play pavilion. So we are building a play pavilion that we just happen to be enclosing and air conditioning.
Because according
we took the tour of.
Because according to the state, elementary school does not merit a gym. So we're just calling it a covered play.
Correct.
And at the same time, we couldn't take the existing gym away from the community.
Well, because it's a community piece, so this is trying to navigate what's required and what's already existing, because the last thing you wanna do, especially in a community school, is take away something that was successful, whether or not was the best facility, it still was meaningful for them and for their use.
And it's not gonna have a wood floor like a regular gym, but it might, like we did at Dunbar, when we kept the building there in Castoli, we put down, it's like a vinyl product, which the boys and girls alternate for quality, for practice. That may be in there, or it might just be painted concrete. But the area, it'll be enclosed, it'll be air conditioned, have lighting, and they can use it all the time.
So there's no green space?
There is around the periphery of the building, we just have.
No, there's no green field, no diamonds, no soccer field, no nothing.
We don't do that at all.
Not for elementary.
But I mean, the
Community school, right?
Elementary.
what is your cafeteria with that concept? And that'll be. So do you have any program like the elementary school after they finish their lunch,
Before
they
and
have to
after
walk
care?
all the way to the gym? That's where you,
So this is where they stage their students for pick up and drop off, so when they are being dismissed, they are dismissed from the dining area and not from the gym.
Right, and the reason the kids all get free reduced lunch, breakfast, early start, and sometimes takeaway bags, which would be part of it. We have our cafeterias preferably located near the bus loops and the parent drop off, so the first thing the kids do is they get their free breakfast, get the energy going. It just so happens to work out with the bus loop, so it makes for a great mustering point for dismissal.
what parent pickup?
So parents pick up, comes to here, goes around, stacking, and then exits. So the administration and the reason why these two work together is because they wanna have easy access to kids being here and whether needing to go to the dismissal through parent pickup or through the bus.
And the SROs will be located up there too. Part of it, the reason we moved the admin up closer towards the central parking lot was they're the first response. So if something crazy happens, which sometimes it does, we at least have senior staff and the SRO there to respond.
Cause the principal is it the same gal that was there?
Yeah.
Okay,
Michelle.
cause that was one of the things from 2 years ago, the security.
Correct.
Cause that was what everybody was concerned about.
Correct.
So, they had actual concerns.
Oh, yeah, no, I mean, the day of the public meeting before this went out for RFQ, there was a shooting while we were all sitting on the meeting, so yeah, it is a true.
That happens everywhere. I live in the Cape, and trust me, I hear it every night I ride my bicycle.
Hey, don't talk
And
about
some
the Cape.
some poor young lady was going down McGregor Boulevard, and some kid idiot with a pellet gun shot her twice, got out of the car, and shot her twice. She's okay, but, so it happens anywhere, you got crazies, you just have to plan for crazy.
The loop on the top, that's a road access, right?
For the bus.
Bus loop.
Bus loop,
Right here,
and your service court is where?
service comes through here, the parking lot for the
The services and
Center.
deliveries and,
yeah, it will come right here, the service area, away from the road.
Sure.
Separate.
Okay.
And the other challenge that we have when it comes to service is that the district lost their what do you call it?
Food vendor.
The food vendor. And now they are struggling to find another food vendor that is a full service thing. So right now what the district is doing is grabbing parts and pieces, so they never know when they're gonna get an 18-wheeler or a box truck or whatever it may be. So there are all kinds of parts and pieces that we gotta make this as flexible as possible, because before we used to be able to know, hey, all you're gonna get is a 20-foot truck and that's it. But now in this case, we might end up with a full set line coming through.
With it being a community school, majority walkers?
Big time.
This is probably one of the highest walker
Right.
area, but you still do have a good bit of pickup, but there's a lot. But there's
You have a lot of walkers, but it wouldn't be majority.
Okay.
Buses are pretty limited, they're 4 or 5 buses.
Well, I'm just, so like if you're a walker, you're coming in through the main parking area type of thing? Is that what that
Yeah.
kind of track is in almost the middle?
So right now, the way the school is set up is that, when the student comes in, they have to cross to traffic or
Yeah.
to the stacking to get to administration
Right.
building. So what we did in this case was to take what is being very important to the team, which is the
That pedestrian.
pedestrian plaza, and make sure that all the pedestrian is away from from traffic or away from trying to cross lanes where
Yeah.
people are stacking or leaving. So that is part of, that was intentionally done for that purpose.
There is something of a crosswalk going through the parking lot, but that's more of a collector for the parking lot itself.
Okay, alright. I just know I walk my daughter to school and we're very strategic
Yes.
about not getting hit.
But again,
We,
it's such a good thing.
We taught her how to bail.
Wow.
That was one of the first things.
It's so big.
Yeah, well, safety.
Hey, at least you got sidewalks now. When I was in your neighborhood, there were no sidewalks.
It's good to the ultimate shoot, it's not.
No, that pedestrian area is nice.
So the next step, and this is our last slide, so the next step in the iteration is to take the one version that we all worked on, kind of add more details and start looking at the actual refined 3D, because the 3D that you saw were more of a massive understanding of what the building is doing, but now really understanding what are the aesthetics, what are the elements that make it up, and obviously what is being resonating very strongly is your arts brick, that people are connected to that brick, which we have some really cool ideas on how we're gonna take the existing brick and make some, we don't wanna call it it's a monument, it's a celebration. And so we're gonna incorporate some really cool ideas there, but all that feedback is already starting to shape.
You said you have two options, what is that second option?
No, now we're going to one.
So this is what the staff.
Remember the
So
the
this-
W shape? We broke
Yeah.
one of the legs down to help with the
So
barrier.
that was the last option, they voted for this one, just.
So the staff recommend what we
And
see
then-
on the screen.
And if you go back to the graphic you just had, describe what the white lines are. Those are the corridors, but should point out those white lines.
The ones here.
Those are the corridors to the classroom. So some of them are central corridors, meaning going back and forth, so every classroom's gonna have natural daylight, that's per right? And on the single story that goes around on the dog's leg, you'll see it's an outside corridor. Okay, so now, on the south side of that dog leg is if we have to have future expansion, that's where we would double up that corridor and mimic that dog's leg and add the classrooms along that. So they still would have a central corridor, they still would have an outside window for the nature of light. And what we'll do is we'll design all of our mechanical, electrical, and most of it, like NEC, you have to have 20% at senior design anyhow. So everything would be sized up, similar like what we did at MM Middle, you guys are doing the addition, right? We would have size up so that we can plug and play. So that most of the main infrastructure is there, it's just the distribution once we start with the actual shelf space.
So this is all part of the, of understanding that student experience is what's is the key or the main driving factor. This is why this is not your straight up prototype, because this has a very specific site to react to, and it's a community school. And the reason why we broke it with the double loaded corridor versus the single loaded is because we don't wanna, these kids are coming from a one-story school, pretty open, a lot of, as all as it may be, they have a lot of nice natural light coming in, a lot of green areas. So what this does, it gives them the opportunity to, get a little bit of the bigger proportion school, but also have a space that is reminiscent to what they have already. So it's a little less invasive than what going full two-story would be.
What is the existing school on this schematic?
The
Existing school.
Oh, it's under all that, this is
How
what
does
I
it
was
impact
saying.
you?
Existing
gone.
buildings, block one.
So we're building a temporary site, which is essentially portables.
What about them?
Yeah, but
We had property across, we were gonna build a elementary school there years ago. It ended up getting moved because there wasn't enough seat capacity need at the time. It got moved to what we call Tortuga out in Buckingham.
It also happened to be 2008, so that.
Yeah, on the market. Very big hit. So we had that plot of land out there that has been used for community soccer games and things of that nature. But it's flat, it was a perfect fit. We had James Stevens right across the street, which will provide food service. And it's about one of the closest things to the existing Franklin Lake School that we had. So we saved on not having to go lease some property or find some property. And even if we lease it now, the county makes us go through this LDO process for cut-in link. So I think it worked out. It's in the community, it's close by, we have food service. And even though it's gonna cost a lot to set portables up, it's still
And
cheaper
that
than
was-
renting land.
That was up to discussion, that was part of the thing, right, because the project is, how do we build a new school when you have one existing? So that was brought up to the team, and Ms. Freeman, along with some of the feedback through the community, her point of view was, we could potentially stage the portable school here and have not the kids go so far, but that wasn't,
Scott wouldn't let that
Correct,
fly.
no.
I would
No,
not demolish a building with
No,
asbestos
no,
with
but-
children on an active site.
But-
Never, ever.
But the point being is that the community understood, Ms. Freeman and the community understood that they were okay kind of creating a little bit of an inconvenience temporarily so that they can maximize and reap the benefits of full exploration of your entire site. So things fall by their own way, like you wanna get this idea, but some things make sense, some don't, and if it's for the greater benefit, that's the route that they went, so it was a pretty easy sell.
There's a lot of asbestos in that building, so everyone knows, and it's safe, the kids can't get at it. But when it gets demolished, it's gonna become what we call friable, and I don't care who you are with all the water in the world, I'm not gonna put kids on that site.
Right, no, I think it's a good idea. One question is, you finished with the schematic design, did you develop?
No, we're starting schematics.
Have we done any, like a preliminary budget cost?
We're working on that right now, but we'll be turning in full schematics, beginning of next month.
Right now, the projections are somewhere around 60 to 63.
How much money do we have?
Pardon me?
How much money do we have?
We got plenty of money, no. We
I hear that.
We have a 10-year tax referendum, okay? It just doesn't serve the construction needs, but what we do on our large bills is we use what we call certificates of participation, it's COPS funding. And then the tax referendum will help pay that debt service. So on our bigger projects, that's what we use, is the COPS funding. I mean, if you looked at every new seat and building I had to do, I did this back when the projection was 800,000. I would need 675 million prior to the escalation, just to build all those new schools. That wouldn't leave anything for safety, security, the schools, maintenance. So you're forced into getting the COPS funding to meet the seat needs. I mean, remember, from 2008, this district has grown 1,200 students, 1,100 to 1,200 students every year regardless. And I think the last board presentation, they got, in less than 6 months, 1,200 kids? That's a middle school.
It's a middle school year, that's what you're saying,
Middle school
We-
year, yes.
And that's from 2000, we never slowed down,
Yeah.
but we didn't have any money. And we
Correct.
put portables everywhere,
Horrible.
Correct.
had to.
That looks pretty good.
So the other benefit of moving the children and using the portables across from Stevenson's is there's something else that you don't see, especially if you have a job and things are going okay with you. If the kids were on that site, then there's certain people within that community wouldn't be able to work on that site. So the way that this school is being built, more specifically when children are being moved off campus, it's a benefit to the community in a real way. Because at the end of the day, it's about being able to pay bills and have a decent job. So this school is gonna be a shot in arm for the community. Because there are men and women that you would normally see on a school job where kids are there and is active. You're gonna see folk like that on the job working. And so it would literally raise the financial piece of that community right there. I mean, within 500 feet, and you keep going out radius. So this is gonna be a beautiful thing. There's gonna be work on the parts of those CM to make sure that we put people in place and don't do the norm. And what the norm is, you'll see huge projects in communities, and nobody in the community would benefit from it because nobody in the community is working, everybody's outsourced. And then they would expect the community to support it. In that if it's a housing complex, nobody in the community to work on the housing complex, but then the people who live in the community lives there. that's as backwards as night and day. And so this project is gonna represent a shot in the arm for the Dunbar community in a real sense.
And it's consensus, I cannot stress enough how much consensus built in this project is. So I'll put a very simple example, the temporary site, right? The temporary site is a large field that is across the street from James Stevens, which is currently being used for a men and women soccer league on the weekend. So we made every effort for the temp site to not disturb, I mean, it will disturb, but at least give them the opportunity to continue using those fields. And more importantly, once the trailers and the portables are taken out, they're gonna be left with additional parking, parking that is lit, because if not, currently there's no light in there. So this is always looking for ways to work as a team, instead of saying, we can say that, hey, yeah, we have the right idea, this is what it should be. And it might turn out to be that, but the point is that if you build consensus, it makes it that much more stronger, and it gives you an opportunity to rethink your own process. So I cannot stress how helpful the district has been in terms of creating these opportunities for engagement. And now that we move into the schematics and present more openly to the community, it even more, we're super thrilled to be a part of this and cannot be any more excited.
One of the programs at Allen Park is I used to drive my kid early in the morning, they have like a running club. And then that's the benefit of having the open, big, green space is to really good. You know, run. So I was there in the morning, how are you gonna talk, do you guys have that in every?
Well, we don't have a running track per se, but I'm looking at Javier's concept of the courtyard and all those trails, and I'm sure that can be accommodated really easy.
And it's also Stars Complex, it's very close to it, and Stars has a very, very strong sport program.
Historically, this site had really taken care of the younger students, like the Stars Complex has some great baseball fields, soccer fields, basketball courts. They don't have any 8-foot rims. There's nothing elementary school kids can use. And that's when they come over here, you know? So it's kind of, it's a little bit of a different, we're filling in that gap of who Stars Complex is not taken care of.
I mean, this is a community school that is supporting the community, but it's also supported by the community with all the ancillary elements that are around it.
We're running pretty close on the time, so I'd like to open it up to all of you guys for any questions you would have.
I know Trent, you were raising.
I was just thinking, what's been your biggest challenge going through the schematic design? I know it's a pretty, that's out of the ordinary, maybe I should say. I mean, it's a pretty interesting project.
I was gonna say Scott, but then he's
That's
definitely.
First to admit it.
And on top
If
of
I
that,
see something, I speak to it.
and on top of that, is there anything that, this committee can help, the district and this project as a whole with? I don't know what that would be, but
Oh, I
we're
can
trying to
give you
figure
one.
some stuff out.
I can give you one.
as a committee.
Anybody who works with the city, right now, one of the items that Javier brought up, a big problem for the principal is you have a donkey trail that comes right down along this leg of the property. There's an existing canal. And the only way to get off of there, because there's a big existing canal here, is you follow that donkey trail, and there's some undesirables that the principal has said she would prefer not to have there, because there's like a little liquor store or something over here. And they're forced to stay on that donkey trail because of the big berm on Ford Street until they get to that area of release, which is that corner. So we'd like to see a pedestrian bridge built here, pedestrian bridge. The county, that donkey trail goes to one of the local streets here. Somebody put a little pedestrian bridge over there, there's an aluminum little pedestrian bridge. So what I'd like to see, City of Fort Myers pony up, create another pedestrian bridge so we can block that off, so that the non-desirable folks aren't right there by the kids in the back of the building. That would be so that if you guys have any contact with the city, that would be you.
So we had a pre-app meeting with them, and we brought that up. We brought up the connection or the bridge to get them off the property and back into the sidewalk. And then also we brought up the issue here where all you have for high pedestrian area is a 5-foot sidewalk where you have the road and you have a canal. So those are opportunities that we feel that it would be to the benefit of the city to help the team address it. But it's like everything, I don't take no for an answer. You do it once, you ask again, and you find, but I think we have enough argument to say that this is a benefit to the greater good and not just because we're putting a school. Whether you have a school or not, those are things that you should be addressing. So, but no, it's been an excellent, so you have two questions, I'm sorry. So you said how you could help us is, connecting anything on the county side with the emergency shelter. That would be awesome if we can get them to understand that there are practical requirements associated with it, it's not just in code. Then the most of the challenges, it's really, it's a condensed site, so I guess the district is a little used to having a little more breathing room, for buses and traffic and all that, but this is very, very special on its own, in terms of where it's located, so we benefit from, not so much stacking, so that plays to our favor. But one huge challenge that is not only for this project, I'm sure that it's every one of you working on other projects, and even the elementary school we're doing for Collier County right now, is the cost increase. I mean, that is, people can say that, oh my God, you're building all this, like, even if you were building a shoebox costs a lot more today than it did last year, and than it did the year before, and even 3 years before that. So that is a challenge, but I think we all have creative ways to figure things out, but we need to acknowledge that is a fact, and you cannot just not build because that is an issue. You gotta continue because the need keeps growing, so we need to.
When is the target date to open the school?
Excuse me?
When is the target date, 2024?
24 this one.
August 24th.
I'm sorry.
Okay,
So
oh,
the
you
older
gave them
schools,
2 years?
the older
Well, it took
schools
them a while
have
to get the
these
drawings
trees.
together.
2 years?
The older schools have nice big trees. Yes.
And the newer schools do not. So are you gonna put some
So-
trees back
Well,
in here?
Yeah, so,
Here's your answer to that,
No.
it's a shelter.
It's a
And you can't have
shelter.
missiles, can't have anything closer, for safety and parkland and
If it can
security.
hold up 150 mile per hour wind, the tree's not gonna go through it.
Pardon?
The tree's not gonna go through it if it
No,
can
you
hold-
can't have anything that's a missile. And anything
Well,
that's
that's part of the
in part of
code is the
parkland, you
missiles
can't
are,
have anything that
the
climbs up
missiles
on
are
the
part of the
school.
code, aren't they?
Right now, between parkland and the shelter responsibility, it's very barren. But parkland has dictated that there be no gunnery shooting spots, edges, look at Gateway High, what we had to do. And we've put trees in, but they're strategically located to the outdoor sides of the site to beautify the neighborhood, not necessarily in the inner areas. Now, that doesn't mean there won't be some trees, but they're gonna be trees that won't have that missile impact, where a branch could come flying off and go through the
Okay.
window.
Single leader trees like pines and cypress don't break apart in the.
Well, I
Limited
beg to
method
differ
vegetation.
because we sent our maintenance
Limited
people out after the storm for weeks with trucks and chainsaws and hiring guys like Tobler and other CM firms to help us cart off the wood. We couldn't even get emergency access to some of that.
The shelter part on these schools, it has to be ICC 500, that is a very, very restricted portion of the code. So, we all go through the same thing designing schools. There's a lot of landscape and furniture that we would love to have in these schools,
Yeah.
but we just can't. So they end being perimeter to the school, and then there's other things. We also go through water conservation and.
Take your kids to the penitentiary when you drive up to a school with no trees.
Oh, I understand that, but
That's what it feels like.
so, just to your point, we were thoughtful about where the existing trees, because then you have some large canopy trees, so you can kind of see it here and how the design is in response to those being there, but yeah, there are some significant challenges
And you
that we
know,
have.
that's a great question. So I think what we need to show as we move forward is some landscaping so that we can present and try to alleviate some of those concerns. I don't want you to feel like you're getting gunned down or anything, so that's part of the give and take
Well, I
that this
think
is all
the
about.
professionals, the civil engineers, architects have not been putting big trees in. Civil engineers specifically, been putting small trees in parking lots that never ever throw any shade. What's the point of that?
We shouldn't have one large tree in the parking lot, otherwise it's gonna grow and it's gonna
It's
affect
better
your
than none.
parking lot. But what about flood elevation, is that gonna
Yeah,
impact?
that goes up 3 foot,
Yeah, that's
it's
what
about
I'm.
100-year event.
Now that's gonna affect
2
your
feet.
existing building.
Well, that is a challenge, and that's one of the reasons why the consulting had included these guys to be removed,
Right.
because obviously if this is higher, how do we connect to that? So it created challenge, but the DOE was very adamant that that building did not meet the
3 feet, that's
requirements.
a 36
Two feet
of
above 100 years.
a ramp.
So the two main challenges with the requirement from section 45325, the building code, is the elevation, as you mentioned, and then the wind criteria that has to meet ICC 500, which is 200
Are we still
miles.
building it 3 foot above the?
Correct. We build all of our schools 1 foot above 100 year event regardless of shelter or not.
So this is
But
one
by
more foot.
going with full ICC 500, we have to throw that next foot on top of there, and dirt isn't cheap.
No, it's not.
And it's not just the building, it's also emergency access, so any road that is used for emergency access also needs to be, at that higher level, so
But
it has implications.
we did try to get that last remaining building
Yeah.
approved for Castaldi demolition, simply because of that elevation concern. But yeah, that's gonna be a civil challenge to design the elevations and the walkways, 1 inch per 12,
Right.
to, without having to build the helix to get into that existing building, so.
So, Ross, thanks for ratting us out, but like Javier was saying, down in that bottom left corner, there's some really nice old growth tall pines in there. And then that preserve area, that's part of the retention system. We were doing our best to stay away from that, mature landscape and kind of wrap the buildings around to the outside of it so that we could utilize it for bike paths and things like that.
So
I didn't wanna say
part
too
of-
much until I saw it.
Well, no, so part of, and that's a good point, so yes, the design, you can see it in existing tree, and this is part of why the building is reacting to the way it is. We're trying to preserve as much as we can, but specifically with this preserve area, this is.
There's a
water-
lot of trees there.
Yeah, that's water management for when they did the expansion at MLK, so it's not technically for the district to mess with, but it's a beautiful pine canopy, so what we are suggesting is that you come in and clean all the underbrush that is there, take all that stuff out, which benefit in 2 ways. Number one, no one on can hide in there, because all you're gonna see is that beautiful trunk of that pine tree. And also the school was very interested of using that as a kind of eco lab or a way to create teaching experiences out there. So we are making improvements beyond the school into the full context for the benefit of the community.
All right, we run about, almost 10 minutes or so past our time limit. I could see people getting itchy to go for the door. Ms. Harper has a question.
I just wanted to reconfirm, did you all vote on the minutes of this meeting?
We did.
Okay, just want to make.
Do it, and can we get a motion to approve the meetings?
So moved.
As recently presented. Thank you, Mr. Tobler, seconded.
What was the names, I can't second it.
Second
I'll second.
by Mrs. Brown. Thank you very much, all in favor? Any opposed? Not hearing any, the minutes from February have been approved unanimously. Thank you again, Ms. Harper, for pointing that out.
Oh, you're
Can
welcome.
we get a brief show of hands of how receptive you all are to this initial schematic concept design?
It is a beautiful design.
I'd say that's pretty overwhelming. The only dissenter was Ms. Morgan. All right, so I think you're on the right path. Great job. We appreciate your work.
Yeah. We love doing it.
So now that I got their blessing, my next is the front office. And then after that, it'll be a small community meeting, and then it'll be a bigger community.
All right, our last agenda item is for the good of the order. Anything else that anyone feels present to bring to the committee at this time?
Can we have the staff update us on the Sawyer,
So that's all.
yeah,
Oh, the solar?
yeah, next,
Yes,
we'll
next
make it,
meeting.
We'll try
next
to get
meeting.
that on the agenda for the next meeting.
Next week.
And then we have the, we told them to go ahead and meet with a consultant and see.
Right, we'll follow up on that. We kind of recommended they go ahead and do some preliminary studies.
Right.
And we'll follow up, see what happened there. All right, anything else? So it looks like we're due for a motion for adjournment.
I'd like to make a motion.
Motion by Ross, seconded by Mr. Brown, all in favor? Thank you very much, see you guys.
Appreciate that.
Really need me to sign in? Yeah, if you could.